Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Afi and I'm back again with another video. This video is going to be a chapter review of the book Real Love in Dating. If you haven't watched my other ones, I'm going to link them in, they have like their own playlist, so I'm going to put the playlist up here and you can check that out. This is going to be chapter 5, and in chapter 5 we're talking about spotting the gold and avoiding the rocks. So chapter 1 was an intro to the book, chapter 2 was talking about getting and protecting behaviors, chapter 3 I can't remember, chapter 4 was about I guess like the perfect date or something like that, and then the concept of gold was brought up in chapter 4, and so now chapter 5 is basically like now talking about how you can spot that gold and avoiding the bad things. Get into this video. So as I said, the topic is spotting the gold and avoiding the rocks, and the first subtopic is what to look for and what to avoid in a partner. I mean, I think that's just like the overall topic as well. So the chapter basically just begins by, if you haven't watched chapter 4, I feel as if now it's gotten to a place where like if you don't understand what the other chapters are talking about, then you could struggle just a bit to understand the rest of the book, just because it's all just like building up on each other. And so the question here is, so aren't you saying that if we get enough real love in our lives, we could love everyone? If that's the case, why bother to date and find the right person? If we can love everyone, why not just marry the next person we run into? And the answer was, as we find sufficient real love in our lives, our emptiness and fear disappears. We then gain the ability to accept all people and care about their happiness without them doing anything for us. The definition of real love. That doesn't mean, however, that we won't find some people more enjoyable to be around, and I think that's just like self-explanatory. And I think the point of this topic is just basically saying that like you need someone who can also add to your happiness, and I say add to your happiness in keeping in mind that the idea of real love is that you already have happiness. So if someone is coming into your life, they're basically adding to your happiness, not being the source of your happiness. That's something that's so important. Also, I'm not speaking from experience, I am speaking from the book, okay? Yeah. And I feel like even as I was reading this chapter, there's so many concepts that seemed so sort of like utopian, and I was like, is that even possible? And I think unless you actually experience it, then you can't truly understand the entire concept. Like I can't claim to truly understand the entire concept just because I haven't experienced it myself, and so I'll let you know when I do. So yeah, then there's a question like, is it trade? Because we said you need someone who can also add to your happiness, so, and you are also adding to the happiness. So is it trading love or imitation love? So with real love, when searching for a partner, you love unconditionally. Some people do not prove worthy, so you move on to finding one person who proves worthy, who is capable of giving you love, the love that you kind of need. Not someone who loves you in return, but someone who also loves you, mutual giving. So the idea of this is that like you giving gifts or you receiving affection. By the way, if you haven't watched my love languages video, I'm going to link it up here as well so that you can watch it, because I think love languages are so important, and it's very important to know yours, and they always change depending on the different situations that we're in. So it's not like cast in stone, but even though they change, it doesn't mean that it's not relevant. But the point here is like you giving gifts is you giving from a place of love, not from a place of like, let me give them a gift and then maybe they'll do something in return for me, or they've given me this so maybe I should do this. Like it's not supposed to be like that. Almost like you're doing it because someone has done something. You're doing it from a place of love, of just giving. And I feel like that's such a good idea. Like it's such a good concept, and it's very interesting. Like I'm very interested to know if any of you are in that kind of relationship, like a relationship where you feel as if someone is like loving you just because they love you, not because you do this for them or you do that for them. And I feel like if I think about like real life and how a lot of people are, it's like I do something because someone has done something for me, so I don't want to feel bad, or I don't want to feel this kind of way, or I don't want to not feel this kind of way, and so I'll do it in reciprocation or in anticipation of something. And I think the idea of mutual giving is like, just giving. just giving because you want to give. So the criteria for loving versus marrying someone. So there's this idea, as we started the whole thing by saying, wouldn't you then be able to love everyone? So does that mean that you can basically marry anyone? And so there's a different criteria for loving and a different one for marrying someone. For real love is basically like you can give anybody real love. Like the person on the street, you will give them real love, but you're not gonna marry the person on the street. Like that's a difference. That's the biggest difference. So there's a story here that's told in the book, and I don't know if I mentioned this, but the author is Greg Bear, and he is a psychiatrist, yeah, and so he does a lot of like real love therapy. That's what he calls it in the book. And so yeah, anyway, so there's a story that he gives of this lady called Sylvia who had just begun I have a friend called Sylvia, but anyway, there's a story he gives about this lady called Sylvia who had just begun real love therapy, and she was in a relationship with this guy called Roger. And she comes into his office and she says, I'm understanding this concept of real love, and I'm with this guy called Roger, and this Roger doesn't seem like he has a lot of real love in his life. Like I can tell he's very negative. I can tell there's so much happening, like there's just a lot of negativity, and I can just tell that he doesn't have a lot of real love in his life. And so the author asks her, like, okay, so what do you want to do about this situation? Like, do you want to break up with him? Then she's like, but what if I give him enough real love, then maybe he's going to be able to give me back the real love, or like whatever, something like that. Or maybe he'll receive enough real love for him to be able to give out real love. And the author asks her, if you're walking up a hill, is it easier to walk up a hill just on your own, or is it easier to walk up a hill with like a ton of bricks on your back? And of course the answer is alone, like without the ton of bricks. And the point here is like, when she's learning about real love and she's just learning about it, is it easier for her to learn about it on her own, or with somebody who can give real love, or is it better for her to learn it with somebody who cannot and who's basically becoming like a weight on her shoulders, And so of course there's an obvious answer, and regardless of what decision she chooses to make, I think the point of this is that like you need to look for someone who is capable of giving real love and who is not adding a burden to you, who is not making you like this person who has to carry them, and like that whole idea of like you have to save somebody. Honestly, I don't know where that idea came from, and I don't know why it's been so romanticized, like you have to be saving people, and like your job is to teach people, and I'm not saying, and of course like I said, I have no experience in this matter, so I can't really be like, oh, me, I'm just gonna be like this and blah 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 blah. I really can't say that, but I can say that I know that my job is not going to be teaching someone real love. You know what I'm saying? Like, just in that sense, I think it's just, it's easier if the other person has real love as well. And I guess circumstances change and people are different, and there's all these things that come into play. But, I think the point of this is like, you don't need that weight. If you can let go of that weight, then, just do it, please. Okay, so the thing is that find a partner who will add to your happiness, as I've said a million times before in this chapter. And the things that you should be looking for are, first, the relative absence of getting and protecting behaviors. This is in chapter 2. So I'm going to link chapter 2 up here. You can check that out. And yeah, so the relative absence of getting and protecting behaviors. And I think the point is that there's no one person who doesn't have absolutely no getting or protecting behaviors. You just need to look for how often they come up, how much they use them, and stuff like that. An example I remember in the book is like, there was a story, I think, does it come here? No, don't come here. But the point is like, yeah, okay, fine. Let me jump into the next criteria. The second criteria is a minimum of addictions to imitation love. So the reason why I was getting a bit confused is because I wanted to bring up this story of this lady called Cynthia and her fiance. So this lady called Cynthia had just started real love therapy, right? And she met this man and they loved each other, and he quickly became her fiance, right? But the history of this man is he had been married, I think, like 3 times before he had an affair every single time that he got married, and so his marriages always ended in divorce because he was having an affair. And so he met this lady called Cynthia, and Cynthia was like, we love each other and we're good and blah blah blah. And so they came to see this psychologist, and he was like, and he basically just told her, he was like, are you really sure that this is something that you want to do? Like, look at his history, sort of. And she was like, no, it's different with us. I love him, he loves me, blah blah blah. And so, and the Greg was like, no, like, I would advise you against it, but it's up to you at the end of the day. So they went ahead. Yeah, I think within like a month they were married, and in 3 months they were divorced, right? And I don't know if they were divorced or like they had separated or like they were having issues then in like 3 months from this time when they came to see him. So I think it was like 4 months ahead. And he was like, and she comes back and she's like, I don't understand what happened. Like, why did it not work? We loved each other, blah blah blah. And the point here is that, first of all, this fiance of hers was a bit problematic because he sort of had an addiction to imitation love. And imitation love also comes up, I think, in chapter 3. In chapter 3, yeah, we talk about imitation love, and there's different forms of imitation love. There's sex, there's power, safety, I think, and something else. I can't remember all of them, but yeah, so he had like, there was like a thrill, right? So he would meet someone new, he would be excited, he would get into a relationship with them. After a while he's bored, and then he moves on to the next person, and he was sort of like addicted to imitation love. And that was just a recipe for disaster. Like, it wasn't that he's a bad person, it's that he was addicted to imitation love, and maybe he did not know it, and so he didn't work towards not having that behavior anymore. And so that dooms any relationship, because you're always going to be looking for that spark, and you're always going to be looking for that thing that you're lacking, and so it's not going to last. And a point here is, look for someone who is aware of their own use of imitation love. Because you see, the point is not that somebody is perfect, like they don't have any form of imitation love, because I think a lot of us like have this thing, like it's like pleasure or safety or whatever it is. But the point is, like, you should be aware that in this moment you're using a protecting behavior to sort of like get this imitation love. Does that make sense? Like, that's the point. You need to be aware of it. It's easier to fix something if you're aware of it than if you're not aware of it. And the third criteria is an ability to tell the truth about his or her mistakes, flaws, and getting and protecting behaviors. And this sort of like ties into the second point, I mean. And it's just, the thing is that here I want to bring in an example that I think may need to come in later, but it may need to come in later, but that's something that you need to look for. Someone who can tell the truth about their mistakes. Someone who, I feel like I try so hard to be aware of my mistakes, to like at least in my head be like, oh yeah, that was something wrong or something like that, just because it's important. I think it's important to take responsibility for your actions. I think too many people walk around blaming the world for everything that's happening when there's so many things that you can take responsibility for. And so work in progress. But so now to the meat of the topic. I mean, not really the meat of the topic, but how to look for gold. So as I mentioned earlier, chapter 4 talks about the idea of fake gold and real gold, and watch that video. And just in case you haven't, I'm just gonna say that there's this gold that looks like gold. There's this like material that looks like gold, and it's called fake gold. I can't remember its actual name, but like they call it fake gold because it looks so much like gold. But then no matter how long this fake gold stays in this place or hidden or whatever, it's never gonna transform into real gold, right? So anyway, how to look for gold. The first thing is look for positive behaviors, right? So examples of positive behaviors is like giving flowers, taking you out on dates, calling you just to check up on you, and doing all that stuff. Those are positive behaviors. The second thing is look for the absence of negative behaviors. So it's not about necessarily being perfect, but it's about you realizing that, like, oh, this person doesn't get angry just like that, or this person doesn't get irritated just like that, or this person doesn't does not run away every single time we have an argument, or this person doesn't go to another girl every single time we have an altercation or whatever. Just look for the absence of negative behaviors. So the way to find this is asking, right? So the next part is what to ask and how to evaluate it. So questions like, when you're on a date or whatever, in chapter 4 there's a list of questions given. I highly recommend that you get this book, because of course I'm not telling you everything, and so you need to read the book to get the flesh of it, but I'm sort of like giving you an overview of it, right? So anyway, a question that you could ask is, have you ever lied to a partner, right? And something that the author says here is, it's not important the content of the lie or like what it is they lied. What is important is whether they tell you the truth and whether they take responsibility for the lie, because sometimes you're like, no, but he made me do this, and so that's why I lied. I didn't have an option. And you see, that's a problem. Someone who thinks that they didn't have an option, and that's something I've been battling with as well. It's just the whole concept of I didn't have an option. We love to say it. We love to be like, oh, I didn't have an option. Like, that's all I had to do. That's, I didn't have, like, there was no other way or something like that. I think it's so important for us to remember that we all are in a position to make decisions. Like, we make choices in our life, and it's your choice, and whether it's wrong or right, whether it leads you to the right place, at the end of the day you made a decision and you have to take responsibility for that. So that's what's important to evaluate in a human being. And then we move on to the concept of I love you, the statement I love you. So the first I love you is imitation love. The imitation love I love you basically is saying, I like how you make me feel. I love you now, so you love me back. Or I love you because you did this for me. That's what imitation love is basically, right? And just thinking that, like, thinking about all these movies where someone tells the other person I love you, and then the person doesn't respond, and then the person gets angry and they're like, oh, I don't know what, blah blah. But I was just watching Gilmore Girls. Oh, you guys, if you haven't watched that movie, highly recommend it. But in Gilmore Girls, there's this couple. It's Rory and Logan. Oh, I love. He was a gem. Anyway, Logan and Rory, when I think she told him I love you first, and I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do a side by side. So there's Logan and Rory, and then there's Rory and Dean. So when Dean told Rory that he loves her, and this was like her first relationship, blah blah blah, she panicked, she didn't say anything back, blah blah. He got upset, there was a whole fight. Yeah. Then Logan and Rory. Rory told Logan that she loves him first, and then he didn't respond back, and he was like, I don't want to tell you I love you now, because I want to tell you when I actually mean it. And when he actually did say it, we were all just like, it was just so nice. Anyway, so these are the two distinctions of sort of like imitation love and real love. Anyway, so real love, the second I love you is the real love I love you, which says I'm loving you regardless of what you will do to me, regardless of what you do, blah blah blah. Like, I'm loving you from the kindness of my heart. Then real love plus, which is the third category of I love you, is when you both have real love, and so you're both loving each other just because you love each other, and that sort of like union is like an explosion of just really, really good love, because it basically says I care about your happiness unconditionally, and in addition, I love how I feel when I am around you. And that's the whole concept of it. And so yeah, that is the end of chapter 5. I feel like I've spoken so much in this chapter, but I feel like this chapter was shorter than the rest. I think the next chapter is going to be so long as well, just like chapter 4. Chapter 4 was long. I had to split it into 2 videos. But this chapter 5 was good, and I hope that this helped you. And yeah, I hope this helped you. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I will see you next time. Bye.